Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I have a story that began just before the COVID-19 pandemic in late 2019 and concluded in early 2023. I'm a first-time poster and English is my third language, so please forgive any awkward phrasing. I'm your typical laid-back guy who happened to be born into privilege. As the middle child and black sheep of my family, talk about a double whammy. I've managed to get by with a decent amount of intelligence and some fortunate breaks. Thanks to my parents' connections, I attended prestigious schools in my country, completed my military service where I rose to the rank of captain, and then went abroad for college. I've always kept my social circle small and tight-knit, which suits me just fine. You're wasting your potential, my father would often say, but I'd just smile and reply, I'm building my own path, Dad. After college, I landed a government position. Yes, family connections again. And after several years, I leveraged my family name to establish multiple businesses in my coastal city. My startup capital came from various sources: allowances, a small inheritance from my grandmother Sarah, some successful investments, a trust fund set up at my birth, and family gifts. Essentially, their insurance policy against me becoming an embarrassment, though I've always lived quite modestly. My friend Marcus once joked, only you could turn a silver spoon into a successful business empire while pretending to be a regular guy. My business has thrived in our coastal location, which draws both domestic and international tourists. We also get plenty of locals hoping to connect with tourists for various reasons. Green cards, pen pals, potential spouses, you name it. It's pretty typical for a coastal tourist hub. The incident. I pride myself on taking care of my employees. They receive full salaries rather than depending on tips, which aren't common here anyway. Comprehensive medical insurance including dental and optical coverage on top of the national healthcare scheme. We also provide mandatory retirement benefits, 30 paid vacation days, above the legal minimum of 21, paid overtime, and extensive medical leave for serious conditions, including provisions for treatments like chemotherapy or dialysis. Maria Rodriguez, one of my most valued employees, had worked her way up to manager through sheer talent and dedication. Everyone loved her. In January 2022, she scheduled a hysterectomy after learning she had an elevated risk of cervical cancer, the same disease that had taken her mother's life 2 years earlier. Having 4 children already, she felt this was the most sensible preventive measure. I've done all the paperwork, Mr. Chen, she told me, showing me the hospital documentation. Everything's approved by our insurance. We processed it as medical leave rather than vacation time, and the procedure went smoothly at an in-network private hospital. We'd secured all necessary pre-authorizations from the insurance company. 3 months later, Maria came to work visibly upset. Initially, we feared her follow-up tests had revealed cancer, but the reality was different. The insurance company had refused to cover the procedure. They're saying I owe $45,000, she said, her hands shaking as she held the bill. I don't know what I'm going to do. I sent James, my accounts manager, to speak with the insurance company. He returned fuming. They basically told me to get lost, he reported. Wouldn't even look at our documentation. I decided to handle this personally. At the local office, they kept me waiting for an hour, only to inform me that their regional director was too busy to meet me. Frustrated, I flew to their headquarters in the capital city, a 2-hour flight away. The response there was even worse. The customer service representative, Sarah Miller, delivered the news with a smirk. We revised our policy last month. It's retrospective for 12 months. But we had approval 5 months ago, I argued. Why weren't we notified of these changes? We informed our large clients, she replied dismissively. Smaller accounts will be notified at renewal. When I demanded to speak with their vice president, Mr. Thompson, she actually laughed. Mr. Thompson doesn't have time for small clients, she said. If you don't like our policies, you're welcome to take your business elsewhere. The Revenge. I returned home and immediately paid Maria's hospital bill in full. I'll find a way to pay you back, she insisted tearfully. Absolutely not, I responded firmly. This was their mistake, not yours. During the next few weeks, I worked with my directors to find a new insurance provider. New Health Insurance Corp offered an impressive package: comprehensive medical, dental, optical, mental health coverage, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, rehabilitative services, mobility device coverage, smart payment cards for outpatient visits, death and funeral benefits, and coverage for up to 6 dependents plus spouse. It would cost more, but the benefits far outweighed the expense. Old Insurance seemed unconcerned when I arrived to terminate our contract until they saw the stack of documentation I brought. Their faces fell as they realized the scope of what they were losing. Not just a restaurant, but 3 popular bars, a taxi fleet, a resort hotel, a cleaning service chain, a security company, and multiple properties across the country. The regional manager, Mr. Peterson, suddenly appeared from his office. "There must be some misunderstanding," he stammered. "We can certainly review your case." "Too late," I replied calmly. "The paperwork's already signed with your competitor." Within days, their CEO called personally. "We value your business," he pleaded. "We can offer you a much better rate." "Like you valued it when your staff told me to leave if I didn't like your policies?" I responded before hanging up. The transition took 6 weeks. During this time, I shared my experience with family and friends during various gatherings. Aftermath. The impact was significant. My family and friends withdrew their business too. When COVID-19 hit in full force during 2022, Old Insurance struggled to stay afloat. By early 2023, they went into receivership and were acquired by New Health Insurance Corp. While most employees kept their jobs, the senior executives who had dismissed us were let go. In a fitting conclusion, I purchased their former local office building when it went up for sale. As I stood in what used to be Mr. Peterson's office, now being renovated into modern business spaces, I couldn't help but appreciate life's ironies. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting karma do its work. The next one is an entitled people story. Growing up in a small town in Vermont, I never thought I'd find myself in a legal battle with my own sister over property. But life has a way of throwing curveballs at you when you least expect it. This all started about 8 months ago when I finally achieved my dream of buying a historic farmhouse. I'm Sarah, 34 years old, and I've spent the last decade working as an IT project manager, saving every penny I could. My sister Emma, 38, has always been the more free-spirited one in the family, jumping from job to job and relationship to relationship. Our parents supported both of us equally growing up, but Emma always seemed to need more help, more money, more everything. The farmhouse I bought was this beautiful 1890s property sitting on 15 acres of land. It needed work, sure, but it was exactly what I'd been looking for. Something with character that I could restore over time. I'd been searching for nearly 2 years when I found it, and the moment I saw it, I knew it was meant to be mine. The previous owners were an elderly couple who had to move into assisted living. Their children wanted to sell quickly, and I managed to get it for $380,000. A steal considering the location and acreage. I'd saved up a substantial down payment and secured a mortgage with a good rate. Everything was falling into place. The day after I closed on the house, I invited my family over to see it. My parents were thrilled, especially my dad who loves old houses. But Emma, her reaction was strange from the start. "This is perfect," she exclaimed, walking through the house. "The kids would love it here. When can we move in?" I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Move in? This is my house, Em." She turned to me with this completely serious expression. "Come on, Sarah, you know I've always wanted a farmhouse. And you don't even have kids. What do you need all this space for?" "I bought this house for myself," I said firmly. "I've worked hard to save up for it." "But I'm your sister. We're family. And Jason and I really need to get out of our apartment. The kids need space to run around." Jason was her current boyfriend of 6 months, and she had 2 kids from her previous marriage, aged 8 and 10. "Emma, this is my house. I'm not giving it to you." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. My parents looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything at the time. The next day, my phone started blowing up with texts from Emma. "You're so selfish. I can't believe you'd do this to your own sister. My kids deserve better than that tiny apartment. You've always had everything handed to you." I ignored them all. But then came the phone call from our mother. "Sarah, honey, don't you think you could help your sister out? Maybe you could let them rent it from you?" Mom, I bought this house for myself. I'm not renting it to Emma. You know she's terrible with money and never pays anything on time. Besides, I'm moving in next week. But she's family and she's struggling. Mom, I love you. But this isn't up for discussion. This is my house. Things escalated quickly after that. Emma started showing up unannounced at the house while I was there painting or cleaning. She'd bring the kids and let them run around like they owned the place, ignoring my requests for them to be careful around the ongoing renovation work. One day, I arrived to find Emma and Jason actually moving boxes into my garage. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded. "We got evicted from our apartment," Emma said casually. "We need somewhere to stay, and you have all this space." "Get your stuff out of my garage right now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is trespassing." "You can't be serious," Emma screamed. "You'd let your own sister be homeless?" "You're not homeless. Mom and Dad have offered to let you stay with them until you find a new place." "Their house is too small, and it's an hour from the kids' school." "That's not my problem, Emma. Get your things out of my garage now, or I'm calling the police." Jason stepped forward, trying to look intimidating. "You wouldn't dare call the cops on your own sister." I pulled out my phone and dialed cop right there. Emma and Jason scrambled to remove their boxes while screaming that I was a horrible person and that they'd make me regret this. The police arrived just as they were leaving. I filed a report about the incident and got advice about securing a restraining order if needed. The officer suggested installing security cameras, which I did the very next day. That evening, my phone exploded with messages from various family members. Emma had gone on a social media rampage, posting a long, tearful story about how her wealthy sister bought her dream home and was now leaving her family homeless. She conveniently left out the part about our parents offering their house, or the fact that their eviction was due to them not paying rent for 3 months while Emma bought designer clothes and Jason upgraded his gaming setup. My Aunt Carol called to tell me I was heartless. My cousin Mike sent me a long message about how family should come first. Even my grandfather, who had never involved himself in family drama before, called to express his disappointment. But the worst was yet to come. Emma showed up at our parents' house for Sunday dinner, which I had stopped attending due to the tension, with a legal document she'd printed from some website. She claimed it proved that as my sister, she had some kind of right to family property. My mother, bless her heart, actually called me in tears asking if this was true. I had to explain that no, downloading random legal documents from the internet doesn't give you rights to someone else's property. The following week, I arrived at the farmhouse to find Emma's kids' bikes in the front yard. I walked in through the unlocked front door. I hadn't changed the locks yet, stupid mistake, to find Emma, Jason, and the kids eating lunch in my kitchen like they owned the place. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. "We're moving in," Emma announced. "We have squatters' rights now. We've been here for hours, and according to the law—" "That is not how squatters' rights work," I interrupted. "Get out now." "Make us," Jason sneered. I called the police again. This time they arrived quickly and removed Emma and her family from the premises. I immediately called a locksmith to change all the locks and had my security system upgraded. That evening, I received a cease and desist letter from a lawyer Emma had apparently hired. The letter was full of grammatical errors and bizarre legal claims. I took it to my own lawyer, who actually laughed out loud while reading it. "This was clearly written by someone who has no legal training," she said, "but we should respond formally anyway." My lawyer sent a strongly worded response, making it clear that any further attempts to occupy my property would result in legal action. She also helped me file for a restraining order against Emma and Jason. The next few weeks were tense. Emma continued her social media campaign against me, now claiming I was using the legal system to abuse her family. She even started a GoFundMe page to save her children from homelessness, which surprisingly raised several $1,000s from gullible strangers who bought her story. My parents were caught in the middle, trying to maintain relationships with both daughters while clearly being manipulated by Emma's tears and accusations. But things took an unexpected turn when Emma made a crucial mistake. She posted a video on social media, filmed from my property, where she showed herself and Jason attempting to break into my house through a window. She actually narrated the whole thing, claiming it was her house and that I had stolen it from her family. She even showed her kids trying to climb through the window. The security system caught all of this on camera as well, and my lawyer was ecstatic to have such clear evidence of attempted breaking and entering. The restraining order was quickly approved after that, and Emma and Jason were arrested for attempted burglary. They spent a night in jail before being released on bail. The experience seemed to shake Jason enough that he broke up with Emma shortly after, leaving her to deal with the legal consequences alone. My parents finally started to see the reality of the situation when Emma's criminal record became public knowledge. It turned out this wasn't her first brush with the law. She had prior charges for shoplifting and credit card fraud that she'd managed to keep secret from the family. The criminal charges forced Emma to accept a plea deal that included mandatory counseling and probation. During her counseling sessions, it came out that she'd been lying to our parents about numerous things, including claiming I had promised her the farmhouse before buying it, and that I had stolen her savings to make the down payment. My mother called me in tears, but this time to apologize. "I should have known better," she sobbed. "You've always been responsible and honest. I let Emma manipulate me, just like she's done her whole life. I'm so sorry, honey." The truth about Emma's GoFundMe also came out. She had used most of the money for a shopping spree rather than housing, and several donors reported her for fraud when they discovered the truth. The platform shut down her campaign and began an investigation. Meanwhile, I was finally able to focus on making my farmhouse a home. I hired contractors to restore the original hardwood floors and replace the aging roof. The kitchen needed a complete overhaul, but I was careful to maintain the historic character of the house while adding modern amenities. My parents started coming over to help with the renovation work. Dad turned out to be surprisingly skilled at carpentry, and together we built beautiful built-in bookshelves in what would become my library. Mom helped me plant a vegetable garden and taught me her secrets for growing the best tomatoes. 6 months after the break-in attempt, Emma reached out through her counselor, asking to meet in a supervised setting. After discussing it with my lawyer and therapist, yes, I had started seeing one to deal with all this family trauma, I agreed. The meeting was eye-opening. Emma, for perhaps the first time in her life, took responsibility for her actions. "I've been entitled and selfish," she admitted. "I always thought the world owed me something, and I was jealous of how hard you worked for what you wanted. It was easier to play the victim than to admit I was making bad choices. While I appreciated her honesty, I made it clear that our relationship would need a lot of work before I could trust her again. The restraining order would remain in place until her probation ended, and any future contact would need to be carefully managed. I understand," she said. "I'm focusing on getting my life together now. I found a steady job, and I'm taking financial management classes. The kids are in therapy too. They needed help processing everything that happened." Over the next few months, Emma showed consistent progress. She maintained her job, found a modest apartment she could actually afford, and stuck to her counseling sessions. Our parents helped with the kids while she got back on her feet, but they were careful not to enable any more entitled behavior. 1 year after buying the farmhouse, I hosted a small housewarming party. The renovation was mostly complete, and the property looked beautiful. My parents were there, along with a few close friends who had supported me through the whole ordeal. Emma wasn't invited. We weren't ready for that yet. But she sent a card that showed she was finally starting to understand boundaries. "Congratulations on making your dream home a reality. You worked hard for it, and you deserve it. I'm sorry I tried to take that away from you. Maybe someday I can visit and see what you've done with the place, but only when you're ready. Love, Emma." The whole experience taught me valuable lessons about standing firm in the face of family pressure and the importance of setting clear boundaries. My farmhouse became not just a home, but a symbol of perseverance and self-respect. These days, I wake up every morning to sunrise over my fields, enjoy coffee on my restored wraparound porch, and feel grateful for having stood my ground. The family dynamics are still complicated, but they're healthier now that everyone understands and respects boundaries. Emma and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship through supervised visits and family therapy sessions. She's maintaining her job, paying her bills on time, and focusing on being a better mother to her kids. The entitled behavior that led to this whole mess seems to be genuinely behind her. As for the farmhouse, it's become everything I dreamed it would be. I've started hosting workshops in my barn for local artists, planted an orchard that will bear fruit in a few years, and even adopted 2 rescue dogs who love running around the property. Sometimes the best endings come after the hardest battles, and I'm proud that I fought for what was rightfully mine. The experience has made me stronger and wiser, and while I never wanted to have to fight my own sister for my property rights, I'm glad I stood firm. It ultimately led to positive changes for everyone involved, even if the path to get there was difficult. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to not give in to their unreasonable demands, even when they're family. The next one is a malicious compliances story. I work at a big retail chain where the stockroom is the Wild West and chaos is the norm. We recently got a new supervisor, Sarah, who seems to think she's running the Navy SEALs or something. She's obsessed with speed, constantly on us about how we need to get things done faster. Doesn't matter if it's done right, as long as it's done fast. So one day, during peak restock time when we're drowning in boxes, Sarah storms in with her clipboard and her best I'm in charge face. She corners me while I'm halfway through a massive inventory check and says, "You're taking way too long with these. Just get through them quickly. We don't have time to check every single item." I try to explain that rushing inventory checks is a bad idea, but she cuts me off with a condescending smile. "If you can't speed this up, maybe this job isn't the right fit for you," she says, all smug like she just dropped a bombshell. "All right, Sarah, you want speed? Let's see how fast things can spiral out of control." So, I take her words to heart and decide to follow her instructions exactly. The next day, I'm scheduled for another inventory check. Instead of my usual process where I count everything carefully, I decide to play Sarah's game. I glance at the shelves and make up numbers that seem about right. I don't even bother opening boxes to check if what's inside matches the labels. I fly through the whole process, marking items off like I'm speedrunning a video game. What usually takes me 2 hours, I finish in just 20 minutes. Sarah sees me finish up and I can see her eyes light up. She walks over, grinning ear to ear. "See, that wasn't so hard, was it? If you keep this up, you might even get a little bonus this month," she says, patting herself on the back for her brilliant leadership skills. Fast forward a week, and the store manager, Mike, calls an emergency meeting. The inventory reports have come back, and they're a total disaster. According to the report, we're missing thousands of dollars worth of products. It looks like we either lost half the stock, or we're running some underground black market. Mike's pissed. Customers are complaining about out-of-stock items, and the regional manager is breathing down his neck. Mike turns to Sarah and asks her to explain how this could have happened. Sarah, trying to save face, immediately points at the team and says, "They must have messed up the counts. They weren't thorough enough." She's throwing us under the bus without a second thought. This is where I decide to strike. I raise my hand and say, "Actually, I did exactly what Sarah told us to do. She said to skip checking the items and just get it done as quickly as possible. I was just following orders." You could hear a pin drop. Mike slowly turns to Sarah, his expression going from confused to furious. "Is this true?" he asks, narrowing his eyes at her. Sarah's stammering now, trying to backtrack. "Well, I didn't mean to skip it entirely. I just meant to speed it up. But it's too late. The damage is done." Mike's already fuming. "So you decided to cut corners on the one thing that affects our bottom line? You do realize we have to do a full recount now because of this mess, right?" And that's exactly what happens. The next day, Sarah and a few unlucky team members spend 12 hours. As they're counting, I make sure to walk by every so often and ask, "Need any help speeding things up? I could skip a few checks for you if that helps." The look on Sarah's face every time is pure rage mixed with embarrassment. She can't say anything because she knows I'm just doing what she asked for. By the end of it, we found thousands of dollars in discrepancies. Turns out rushing through inventory checks leaves a lot of room for errors. Who knew? The regional manager isn't happy and Sarah ends up getting a formal warning. She stops harping on us about speed after that and even tries to be extra nice whenever I'm around. Guess she realized that maybe, just maybe, some tasks shouldn't be rushed. The best part? A couple of weeks later, I get a small bonus for outstanding attention to detail in helping fix the inventory mess. Oh, the irony. Sarah couldn't even look me in the eye when I got the bonus slip. And every time she walks by me now, I just give her a friendly smile and say, "Don't worry, boss, I'm working as fast as you want." Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.